This is a Midwest Minute with Matt. Simple concussion conversations that just make sense. Before we get started, just a quick note. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not medical advice and does not replace evaluation or treatment from a qualified healthcare provider. Listening to the podcast does not establish a provider-patient relationship. Every brain injury is unique, and what we discuss may not directly apply to your situation. If you're experiencing symptoms or have concerns, please seek care from a licensed medical professional. If this is an emergency, please call 911 or your local emergency services immediately. Hello, and welcome to another episode of a Midwest Minute with Matt, simple concussion conversations that just make sense. My name is Matt Campbell, and I am the host of the podcast, and today we have episode 14 titled, Why Can't Anyone Tell Me When I'll Recover? If you've ever had a concussion or been around somebody who's had one or helped somebody navigate through their own concussion recovery journey, you have encountered the question, how long is this going to take? It's one of the first questions that people ask. When can I get back in the game? When can I get back to work? When am I going to feel like myself again? And it's one of the most difficult questions to answer. When I approach this with somebody that I'm working with, my first answer is, I have no idea how quickly you're going to get back to normal. I have no idea how long this is going to take or how long you and I are going to work together. I can give you what research tells me or what the best guess would be based on your situation or your symptoms, but I have no idea how long it's going to take somebody to heal, because concussion recovery doesn't follow a consistent schedule or a consistent calendar. And for most people, that is the hardest thing to hear. Not only from the patient perspective, insurance companies don't like it, employers don't like it, coaches don't like it, teammates and friends and family, they don't like that answer, because it's one of the only things in life that you're told that we have no idea how long it's going to take for you to get better. If you break your arm, we can generally give you the 4 to 6 week mark, right? If I need surgery, most people that have been through a major surgery understand that there's a timeline that they expect you to be back to normal. It doesn't matter what I tell you with the concussion, that the concussion is going to recover on its own schedule. Every brain injury is unique, and the brain follows its own timeline for healing. Today, we're going to talk about why recovery timelines are so frustrating, why comparing our recovery journey to somebody else's increases fear and anxiety, and what we should be doing instead to ensure that we're giving the brain everything it needs to heal in its own timeline. Everybody wants a timeline. And I would venture to say that if you haven't asked this question or at least thought about it, it's going to be wildly outside of the normal. Everybody wants to know how long I'm going to be dealing with this. As a patient, the primary reason is when you're living with symptoms every day and you feel miserable and you don't like it, you want to know that how long do I have to put up with it? If I know that I can fight through this and in 4 weeks I'm going to be back to normal, it makes the journey easier. But when we don't know the answer, the uncertainty can feel overwhelming. Again, it's one of the only things in the medical field that we get an answer of, I don't know how long it's going to take. When we sit down and try to break down concussion recovery, it is the most frustrating part to everybody involved. I can have all of the best plans. I can go through and talk to you about each step of the recovery journey. I can put together a model of what it's going to look like, what we're going to do, what each day is going to feel like. But at the end of the day, your brain is going to recover when it's ready to recover. We're going to do everything we can to optimize our brain injury recovery. But at the end of the day, anybody who tells you they can predict how long concussions are going to take to recover with the given technology and information that we have currently, they're trying to sell you something. Again, I hope that I have a day where I wake up and my job is no longer needed. That there is something that we can give you, medication, a pill, an injection, an exercise, something that we can do that you get hurt, you wake up the next day and you feel back to normal 100%. That's my whole goal. I hope that happens. But realistically, that's not the way concussion recovery or brain injury recovery in general goes. That uncertainty of not knowing when we're going to recover is very overwhelming. When we have that sense of fear or anxiety around our recovery timelines, it can be really difficult to have somebody recover. It can be really difficult to make progress or even see progress in ourselves because we feel overwhelmed by the unknown. We don't know how long we're going to have to fight this. We don't know how long we're going to have to put up with this. And when we don't know, it makes us nervous. The hardest part about recovery, again, isn't the symptoms. It's not knowing when those symptoms are going to end. Concussion recovery is different for everybody. Every brain injury is unique. In the brain injury world, once you've seen one concussion, you've seen one concussion. It doesn't matter if I've seen the same patient for same injuries multiple times throughout the course of my treating them, their brain injury is unique. Each brain injury that occurs is at a completely different chemical makeup. If I have somebody who gets injured 2 years ago and then I see them in 4 years, now all of a sudden I'm sitting here going, hey, this should be easy. I know what their brain is. I know what they look like injured. I know what they look like healthy. Every brain injury is unique, and every brain injury journey is unique. There are so many different things that can influence our concussion recovery, from previous concussion histories to sleep quality to stress levels to environmental factors to hormones, gender, timing of the injury based on our menstrual cycles, vision and vestibular health prior to the injury, our overall health prior to getting hurt, activity demands, support systems. There are so many things that will generally affect concussion recovery that it is absolutely impossible to predict how somebody is going to recover because of all of those different environmental factors. I can sit here and say, yeah, in a perfect world, this is what it's going to go like. This is how everything's going to go. We're going to go from being really symptomatic to not symptomatic. We're going to be going from not doing anything at all to be back on the course riding your bike again in 6 weeks. That's not realistic because of all of those other things that we have to take into effect during concussion recovery. If you've ever worked with me, one of my key phrases is life doesn't stop after a brain injury. When life doesn't stop after a brain injury, there are all of these other things that we have to take into consideration during recovery. Bills continue to pile up, work stresses, spouse relationships have to change, and relationship roles evolve. And we have to figure out how we can navigate brain injury recovery, which is a 24/7 job, with the changing nature of life continuing to move on. And sometimes it feels like it moves on without us. Every brain injury is unique. No two concussion recoveries are going to be exactly alike. When we start looking at comparing our concussion recovery journey, that comparison trap is very dangerous. Concussions can be very isolating, especially if you've been dealing with concussion symptoms for a long time, or if you've been told by somebody in the medical field or in your concussion support team that this shouldn't be lasting this long. You shouldn't still be dealing with this. I'm here to tell you recovery doesn't follow an agenda. It doesn't follow a timeline or a calendar. Just because you've been dealing with it longer than somebody feels like you should be, doesn't mean that you're not still navigating through concussion recovery. And it is one of the hardest things when we feel isolated, and that's not trying to compare concussion recovery journeys. Anybody who's had a brain injury has a story where they were telling somebody about how they're feeling or what they've been dealing with, and somebody goes, "Oh yeah, my brother had a concussion," or "When I had my concussion, I was back in 3 days." Or you have everybody is willing to share a story about somebody they know or somebody they've helped navigate through concussion recovery, or even their own journeys. Sometimes they're trying to help. Other times they're just trying to essentially show you that something that you're doing isn't right. Again, everybody has a story and it's their way of trying to connect with your story. Well, the problem is comparing our brain injury recoveries is very dangerous because your brain is unique. Your brain injury is unique. Your brain injury recovery is unique. It's not anybody else's. In the world today, we have this fancy thing in our pocket called social media that allows us to compare everything. You hear stories like, hey, I was fine in 2 weeks. I have this new social media page that shows how I went from being completely miserable in my room to back to normal in 6 weeks using this technique or this test or this function. And then you have the complete opposite. This is how it ruined my life. This is how I lost my followers, or this is how I lost my spouse. This is how I lost my job. And it can be very dark and dangerous. Then it leaves you wondering, if you're searching through social media looking for these things and you find it, it's like, what am I doing wrong? Or is this what I have to look forward to? When we're trying to compare concussion recovery journeys, social media is one of the best storytelling platforms that we have. It's easy to tell a story. There's no barriers to me hopping on social media and telling everybody exactly how my recovery journey went. Doesn't mean that's how your recovery journey is going to go, but there are no barriers that keep me from doing it. So now if I'm trying to find a community or find a sense of understanding or trying to combat that sense of isolation, and I'm hearing something that's not lining up with what I'm doing, what am I doing wrong? It's in the disclaimer for the episode. No two brain injuries are the same. Brain injury recovery is unique, and what we're talking about might not directly apply to your situation. It's in there for a reason, because even with me telling stories about what I'm seeing with patients or how I'm treating them doesn't mean that it necessarily works for you, because every brain injury is unique. Every recovery timeline is unique. Someone else's recovery journey, someone else's recovery timeline is not a snapshot into what your future is going to look like. Don't compare your brain injury recovery to somebody else's. You are unique. Your brain injury is unique. Your recovery is going to be just as unique. So, how do we shift our focus instead of focusing on when am I going to get better? How, why is my timeline not falling into somebody else's? How do I shift away from when will I recover to navigating through my own journey? Ask yourself, what can I do to improve this week? What can I do today to improve where I'm at compared to where I was a week ago? What am I doing this week that I couldn't do last week? Focus internally on what we're seeing. Concussion recovery is very isolating because people don't understand what happened. People don't get why you're acting the way that you're doing, or people don't have the frame of reference or the empathy to understand that you may not be at the same capacity that you normally are. It's very easy to internalize all of the negativity, not only from the changes to the hormone structure and balance, but also that feeling of isolation. So when we start isolating, we get a lot of time with our thoughts. And one of the hardest things that we can talk about is trying to change mindset. Well, one of the easiest ways that we can help our own concussion recovery journey is trying to focus on what step can I take today? What step can I take this week to ensure that I'm doing what I need to do to continue to progress my concussion recovery forward? Focus on our consistency in what we're doing. Consistent sleep wake cycles, consistent pacing, consistent hydration, consistent nutrition. Trying to stay consistent every day in what we're doing makes the unknown and the ups and downs easier to predict and easier to control. Focus on what I can control. Control the controllables. It's a phrase that you'll hear in sports all the time. There are so many things that are unknown in games that are going to happen. There are so many uncontrollable things in life that we won't be able to influence at all. But what we can control our consistency, we can control our pacing, we can control our mindset, we can control our sleep habits, our nutrition, our hydration. We can control what we can control. We can control what we can control. Control the controllables. Stressing about things we can't control will decrease our concussion recovery consistency. When we focus on our consistency, focusing on what we can control, it can help reduce fear and build our confidence over time because we're able to consistently take steps to move in the right direction. It doesn't mean that changes aren't going to happen. It doesn't mean that if I'm consistently showing up every day and doing exactly what I'm supposed to, that tomorrow might not be harder than it is today. That's one of the most frustrating parts of concussion recovery is even if we're doing everything the way that we're supposed to, it may not mean that things get easier every single day. There are a lot of ups and downs in concussion recovery. Just because we've climbed up the mountain a little bit and we had to come down to get to the next peak doesn't mean that that loss in elevation means that we've started over. We come down a little bit to go back up. It's the consistency that wins in concussion recovery. At the end of the day, we're looking for progress over perfection. Recovery isn't measured on a calendar. It isn't measured by being perfect. We don't need to do every single thing back to back to back every day perfectly. If I can only do one thing today that helps move me in the right direction, that's one more thing that I was able to do yesterday. If I can be perfect, be perfect. But the human body is perfectly imperfect. And it's not a problem until we start talking about how we're supposed to be perfect in our concussion recovery, how we're supposed to be perfect in our brain health, how we're supposed to be perfect in our lives. The concept of perfect is not necessarily something that we can achieve. We want progress, not necessarily perfection. Each step, whether it's forward, backwards, lateral, each step is a step in the right direction. If we're doing things to continue to move us forward, we're making that progress overall. Even if symptoms are going up when we're taking those steps, we're still making consistent progress. Each step, each symptom increase, each feedback that we receive is a step in moving us to the right direction. Concussion recovery is not measured by perfection, it's measured by progress, seeing improvement in our tolerance, fewer setbacks, our recovery times are faster if we have a setback, improved participation, being around more people, returning to exercises or activities that we find meaningful to us. Recovery isn't late simply because it doesn't match someone else's timeline. Your brain injury recovery is unique. Your timeline is unique. It deserves your patience. It deserves consistency. It deserves hope. It deserves understanding. Keep measuring your progress, not somebody else's concussion recovery journey. If this episode helped something click, share it with somebody who needs it. And if you're looking for guidance, support, or clarity during your concussion recovery journey, you can learn more at mwconcussion.com. If you have a topic that you would like covered on a future episode of the podcast, shoot me a DM at mwconcussion on all of our social media channels. If you would like to be a guest on a podcast, reach out. I would love to sit down and have another Midwest Minute with Matt.